As Nicole said, we're going to talk about seeds today. But before we get too far into things, I want to give you a little bit of background of myself, and so you kind of have an idea where I'm coming from and how I got here. So, I originally am from western South Dakota. Grew up on a cattle ranch out there, as did my wife, who's in the audience today. She grew up nearby, also on a cattle ranch. So, living in Vancouver in the Pacific Northwest is quite a different experience for us, where it's so wet and not so hot, not so cold either. So I grew up there, and then I moved across the state of South Dakota and went to university at South Dakota State, where I did a bachelor's degree in range science, which is basically studying how to effectively and sustainably manage wildlands and grazing lands around the world. I also got a master's degree there in plant science. After that, we had a brief stint in Omaha, Nebraska, and then moved on to San Diego, California, down where it's sunny all the time and it never rains. And the beach is always beautiful and the sunsets are great. And while I was there, I got a PhD degree in biology, specifically in alpine plant ecology. So I studied how climate change was affecting plant communities at high elevations in California. And specifically, I was working in the White Mountains of California, which are on the California-Nevada border, on the western edge of the Great Basin. So right there, San Diego's right there. And I'll tell you a little bit about the research here in a couple slides. So I was there for about 7 years, and then after that, moved up to where I am today, to where we all are right now, and that is here in Vancouver, where I'm a postdoc here in the Biodiversity Research Center. Most of my research actually is still down in the United States in Washington, and I'll tell you a little bit about that here as well. So, questions I'm interested in as a scientist, first and foremost, is how have plant communities changed over time? And to answer those types of questions, I look at old data that was collected maybe half a century ago or 25 years ago or even longer if I can find it. And then I've gone back and I've revisited these old research sites and looked to see how things have changed since then. And then I'm also interested in climate change, and that's really where a lot of my interest lies, and how it affects plant communities. So I'm interested in obviously how it's affected communities in the past, and that's where my resurveys come into play. But I'm also interested in how these plant communities are going to change in the future. So to do that, I use a time machine. And it's a really fancy, high technology piece of equipment. It's made out of fiberglass, which makes the best time machines. And what that thing is doing, that's an open top passive warming chamber. And basically what it does is it acts as a greenhouse without the top. So the moisture still gets in, but it's still warming up the environment around the plants that I'm interested in. And so it warms up the plants enough that we're kind of looking into the future, maybe 50 to 100 years from now, depending on how much we think temperatures are going to warm up. So this is an experiment that I did in California, and it's still ongoing, but I won't talk too much about that today. But if you want to see a time machine, a real live time machine, this is it right there. It's not going to get you very far, but you can look into the future with it and see what we think is going to happen. Okay, so like I said, a lot of the research I've done up to date has been in the White Mountains in California. It's a mountain range that a lot of people have not heard of, and if they've heard of the White Mountains, they probably think, oh, New Hampshire. Or maybe the White Mountains that are in Arizona. Well, this is the White Mountains that are in California. And this is White Mountain Peak right here. It's the third highest peak in the state of California. It's at an elevation of about 4,200 meters at the top. And so when I started out, I was interested in how things had changed in this mountain range. And we had a really great data set from about 50 years ago that we could revisit and see and we were interested to see if things have changed since then. So I did a resurvey, and what I found is that a plant called Artemisia rothrockii, which is basically, it's a sagebrush plant, so it's a low-growing shrub. It's a species that back in 1961, when the original data was collected, wasn't found above 3,500 meters of elevation. So we have 0 here, but we have a pretty good population there. And what I found when I went and revisited all these sites from 50 years ago, back in 2010, was that there was a really big population at 3,650 meters. So that showed that that species had actually moved upwards in elevation. So I got a question for everybody. If that plant is found higher than it was before, so just for reference, there was plants that were found way down here. This is, that's at about 3,500 meters. And this is around 3,700 meters, a little bit lower right there. How did those plants get from way down here to way up here on the side of White Mountain Peak? Does anybody have any guesses? How did the sagebrush move up the hill? Yeah. Wind? The wind moved the seeds? Oh, that's really good. You've studied this stuff before. That's right. So she said that wind moved those seeds up that hill. And that probably those seeds would have moved up the hill, right? And then what would they have done? They would have grown. That's right. And that's what happened. So sagebrush has really, really fluffy seeds. And I've got kind of an example here of what they kind of look like. I'll put a few on the dot cam here. These aren't sagebrush, but they're close enough for today. So these are a windblown seed from, these are from dandelions. You guys know what dandelions are, I'm sure. So what happens if you blow on dandelion seeds?
They go everywhere.
They go everywhere, just like that. So that's how those plants probably got up the hill. Seeds were produced, it got windy, and they moved up the hill. Okay, so that's kind of what I found in the alpine in California. Okay, so I couldn't stay in California forever, and so a year ago we moved up to British Columbia, up to Vancouver, and so I'm in a new system now. And I'm again interested in how things have changed in the Pacific Northwest. Specifically, we're down in Washington State, is where I do research now, in North Cascades National Park. Has anybody been there? Great. Pretty neat place, really beautiful. And so we're doing another resurvey. So I did a resurvey in the White Mountains. I told you a little bit about what I found there. And now we're working on another resurvey, which we're still collecting data. We still have to analyze data. But so far what we found is that there's a couple species that have, again, like sagebrush, moved up the hill. So one of those is Epilobium angostifolium, which is fireweed, which I have here. And then, so this is fireweed, kind of a mangled fireweed towards the end of the season. But it has this really pretty pink flower. And how do you think that one got up the hill?
Wind.
Wind again. Just like that. Okay, and then the other thing that we found so far, and again, this is preliminary, but we know for sure that this is another species, Gatheria shalon, which is salal. It's a really common species in our forests. That's another species that has moved up the hill and is found higher than it was before. So we know that fireweed probably moved up the hill with wind. How did salal move up? Anybody have any guesses on that?
I'm guessing feces.
Feces, okay. So how did it get in the feces?
Got eaten by birds or whatever.
Yeah, it got eaten. That's right. So salal is a species that produces fruit, kind of like blueberries. I don't know how salal berries taste, probably not quite as good as blueberries, but birds like them. Maybe bears eat them, and they eat those, and then they walk around for a while, and then they poop. Like they say, everybody poops, and so do bears and birds. And if that bear or bird is moved uphill, and that seed gets pooped out, it has a good chance that it may germinate. And so that could be how that plant moved uphill. And with a warming climate, the conditions may be better than they were, say, 30 years ago when this original data was collected. And so now they can germinate and survive and establish. And so that may be why we're finding these plants up higher than they were before. So, any questions so far? And like I said, this is preliminary. Stay tuned. Hopefully in a couple weeks I'll have more answers as to what else is moving up in the Pacific Northwest Mountains. Okay, so we're going to talk more about seeds now, and I have a question to pose to everybody. So this is Wizard Island in Crater Lake National Park down in Oregon. This is Crater Lake. That's Wizard Island. And Wizard Island is actually a fairly young island. Many thousands of years ago, I think 7,000 years ago, there was a huge mountain here. It blew up and filled in with water. But then the volcano kind of continued and formed this island in the middle, and at the top here is the cone. There's no land connection. So how did this island get all these trees and other plants that are found on that island? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So, anybody want to take a guess how something would have got there? Yeah. Wind and birds? Okay. So wind would have, what would have happened? Wind would have blown the seeds. So there could be fireweed there, right? There could be these. This is an aster species. Did anybody go in the courtyard before they came in? So if you've been in the courtyard, there's a lot of these growing in the area where they don't mow. And these are seeds that I believe that they were planted, but I'm not totally sure. But they move around and they get everywhere. And they're usually found, these plants are usually found in areas that have recently been disturbed and are in an early state of succession. So plants are just coming in. So this is another plant that's moved by seeds. So this plant here may be found there and it's moved by seeds. Okay, or by wind. So what else might have gotten there? You said that birds could have got stuff there? Okay, so what?
If they fly over it.
No, so if they fly over and poop. Well, that's a pretty good bet. Do you think there might be blueberries on that island? Maybe. So how do blueberries get around the landscape? How would blueberries move there? Were they eaten? Do blueberries have seeds in them? So why? Boy, these are really good. I think I'm breaking the rule about eating.
It's okay.
Who wants some blueberries? Who wants to break the rules? How about I pass these around? Or take the blame if there's trouble. So there's seeds in those blueberries, right? Okay. And so, like you said, a bird may have eaten the seeds and flew over the island or landed on the island and pooped them out. Okay, so that's two things. Wind and animals. Now, how else may they have, could seeds get there? Let's think of like a tropical island too. How might the seeds have gotten there? Back there.
Floating in the water.
Floating in the water. So, what's this? It's a coconut. What do coconuts do? First, there's a coconut seed. What do you think? Is this a seed? Yeah. Yeah. So what do coconuts do? Float. Okay. So should we test that?
Yes.
Okay. We think coconuts float. Well, let's find out. It does. Let's get some of my stuff wet. So let's imagine that this is a tropical island. You're not going to find coconuts on Wizard Island. It's a magical place, obviously. It's called Wizard Island. I don't think it's magical enough to have coconuts. However, if this island was, say, on the equator somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, you could get coconuts there, right? So they floated there. Where did they come from? Yeah. The other islands, yeah. So there's islands all over the equatorial Pacific, especially when you get to the western Pacific. And if a coconut's growing on the shore and the seed drops off and it falls in the water, it could float to a new place. And the same thing could happen here on Wizard Island. You could get plants that are growing on the mainland, drop their seeds in the water, they float, and eventually germinate and wind up there. So that's another way that plants probably got to Wizard Island was by floating. So, and would you believe it if I told you this is the biggest seed in the world? You would. Should I pass it around if people want to look at the coconut? Yeah. All right. Okay, so how else, besides wind blowing the seeds, animals eating the seeds, and the seeds floating on water, how else might they get to that island? Yeah.
They could have been introduced by people.
Introduced by people, that is correct. So how do we introduce seeds?
Soles of our feet.
Soles of our feet, yeah. So if we walk in the mud and get some seeds stuck in the soles of our shoes, and then we stomp them off, those seeds might come off and they will germinate in a new place. What else? Yeah.
Yeah, like the fur things that you get on your clothes.
Like
and
the-
your hair.
Oh, like the fur things that get on your clothes and your hair. Kind of like this. Or put it on here. So they could get stuck in my beard, right? All right, so this seed here is from a wild licorice plant. This is actually something that I think grows in British Columbia, but not around here. It's found in drier places. These seeds actually came from South Dakota. My parents were kind enough to collect a few for me and send them to me. But these, you guys know what Velcro is? So how does Velcro work? Anybody know how Velcro works? So Velcro there's two pieces, right?
No.
That's right. So if we look really close at these seeds, and I'll pass some around, I don't get them all here. You see that those seeds have some hooks on them. And so that's like the hard, scratchy piece of Velcro that you see. And our side too. So they have some hooks in them, and they can get stuck to furry things, soft things, like my beard. Or they can get stuck to animals' fur, like if my cats got out and ran through a field, they could get a bunch of these stuck in their fur, and then they could come inside, or they could go to another field that didn't have these and roll around and get rid of them, and then spread those seeds around that way. Or what if we got on a plane right after this, and security decided I wasn't crazy and let me through with all this stuff stuck in my beard, and I ended up in a new place and realized, oh, I've got wild licorice stuck in my beard. I better get this out, and I throw it to the side, and then come back next year, and here's a licorice plant. Well, that's how the seeds got there, right? So humans are really good at doing this. We're really good at spreading seeds around. And it's not just getting cockleburrs stuck in our hair that's going to get those seeds around. Easy. But it's really an effective way. You can get seeds, all our agricultural crops, if you get some weeds stuck in those crops and you plant those, you can get introduced weedy species, get around the landscape that way. Or if you guys walked through a field before and gotten stuff stuck in your socks? Yeah, doesn't feel real good, does it? So how does that happen? So those seeds hurt when they get stuck. So they've got little, a lot of grass species do this. They have kind of spines on the end, and they can get stuck in your socks, or they can get stuck in the hide of an animal. And that animal will move around, or we'll get on a plane and we'll fly somewhere far, far away, and get those seeds out of our socks, throw them on the ground, and all of a sudden we've introduced a new species to an area. And so that's another way that can happen. That's a way that some of those seeds could have got to Wizard Island, or a lot of seeds that grow here in North America. A lot of the plants that grow here in North America, they came from Europe, and they came with people on ships, on planes, and boats, and it was doing stuff like getting stuck in people's clothes, or we actually grew them on purpose and they escaped, and they've done a lot of damage. They could have come over on animals and got stuck that way. So we're really good at moving seeds around. Okay, so let's see, what else? Oh, I'm going to pass these around as well. These are needle and thread. That's actually a native species down in the Great Plains, so it's found in the Canadian prairies as well as the Great Plains of the U.S. And it has spiny seeds that can get stuck in your socks or get stuck in an animal's fur and move around. Okay, so take a look at those. You can try to stick it in your clothes or something like that if you want to see if they stick. Good. All right, so we've determined that, okay, wind is a good disperser of seeds. Eating those seeds, eating certain seeds, eating blueberries, that's a good way to disperse those seeds. What else have we talked about? People getting stuff stuck in fur or in their beards, seeds getting stuck in animals' fur, planting seeds on purpose and then they get away. What's some other ways? Let's think of variations on some of the stuff we've talked about, like wind. So is it just fluffy seeds that can blow around to new places, or is there other things as well? Other types of seeds? Does it have to be fluffy? Helicopters. What kind of tree? It's a tree usually that has a helicopter seed. You guys know what kind of tree it is? Maple? On maple trees, you say? So like this. That one's kind of broken. Let's see if we can find a better one. Okay, so what happens with the helicopter seeds? So like this. That didn't do very good. Yeah, so the seed is up in the tree canopy, and when it falls down, it helicopters down gently, and if there's a slight crosswind, it'll blow that seed away from the parent tree. The seed wants to get away from the parent because it doesn't want to have to compete. So as it's floating down, it may be moving to the side. So let me pass these around. You guys can feel free to throw them up in the air and see if it still works. So those types of, what's that?
What about those pine trees?
Those pine?
But
They
they
do.
only have one, like some they don't.
Yeah, this one has just one. Sometimes they have two wings. But that's a good, you studied seeds a lot. So you mentioned that did you say that pine trees have seeds with wings? Some of them do. Well, let's take a look. Okay, so everybody knows what this is. Pine cone. So is this one seed or is it many? There's many. Where are the seeds in there? In the little things, and then they open up and they come out? Okay. And so you're saying that these have winged seeds. Well, let's see here. It does. So this is a bristlecone pine cone. grows in California and Nevada in the Great Basin. It's the oldest living thing on Earth is the bristlecone pine. And this is one of its cones, and this is one of its seeds right here. And as you can see, so where's the seed on this thing? Is the blob at the end of my finger? Yeah. So that's the seed right there, and that's the wing right there. So I'm not going to try to throw this up in the air and see if it spins. I know that it will. It's kind of fragile. So so these will be hanging in the tree, and then they're open up, right? Just like it did now. Seeds will fall out. So there's a lot of species besides just maple that have winged seeds, and one of those is pine cones. I'll pass around a couple pine cones if anybody wants to see them. Here you go. I think that might have got a little water on it. So. All right. What else do I have here? So, who likes to eat sunflowers? You do. More food, I'm breaking a lot of rules here. Okay, so how do sunflowers get spread around? Do people do it? Do animals do it? So what happens, so when you eat a sunflower seed, you have to crack off the shell, right?
Yeah.
And then you eat the seed inside. So what happens to that seed when you eat it? Is it going to survive in your digestive tract? It's not even going to survive to your throat because you're going to chew on it. So it's probably not going to be spread by eating and pooping out, right? Okay, so how else might that seed get spread around? So we like to eat it, right? And birds like to eat sunflowers, and mice like to eat sunflowers. But are sunflowers always available to those animals? No. So in the middle of the winter, a mouse might be living under the snow, and there's nothing to eat above the snow. It's all gone dormant. All the seeds are gone. They fell off. So what is that mouse going to do to keep its sunflower seeds for the winter? Yeah. That's right. So what a mouse is going to do, and a lot of other animals like chipmunks and squirrels, is they are going to collect those seeds in the summer and store them. Now, so what's going to happen so this is acorns, and this is a woodpecker that has cached. So storing those seeds is called seed caching. And this woodpecker stores some acorns in the bark of a tree. Now what happens with the sunflowers or even the acorns if that bird or that mouse or whatever animal collected them and cached them forgets where the seeds were? So we've all put something somewhere and then we forgot where it was and just kind of never found it again. What happens if we forget where we put our seeds? Yeah.
They grow, but some birds can remember like 10,000 seeds.
Yeah, most of the seeds are going to be remembered, but some are going to get forgot, right?
Especially by squirrels. They usually bury them and then find them at random because lots of birds.
Yeah, they probably steal from each other. But sometimes they forget, or they hide them so well that others can't find them, and then they can't even find them. And if you forget them, and if that animal forgets them, then those seeds, what's going to happen? They're going to grow. That's right. So that's another way that those seeds can get around to new places, is by caching. And then if the animal forgets where the seeds went, or maybe something ate that squirrel, and the squirrel died, well, nobody knows where those seeds are. And so those seeds are going to be left alone, and given enough time in the moisture, and then in the spring, they're going to get wet, and they're going to sprout, and they're going to grow. And so that's another way those seeds are going to spread. So there's a lot of species like the acorn or sunflower that's how they would be naturally spread. So here's some more sunflowers. All right, let's see. I think that's kind of most of what I brought along. So, you guys have any questions? Before I forget, there's some other kind of oddball ways that seeds are going to move around. And they may not move very far, or they may move a long ways. So, can a seed propel itself forward? How so? Yeah.
What are those weird cucumber things that
They shoot them out. Yeah, that's right. So there is actually some plants that they can basically explode and the seeds will spread away.
well, I want one.
Yeah, so this is a seed pod and seeds from what's called jewelweed. It's a wetland plant found in the prairies. And sometimes it'll fall on the ground, or even if you touch it gently, it can explode and the seeds will go everywhere. And they go far enough to get away so they don't have to compete with the parent. So that's another thing I don't have with me today, but that's kind of an oddball way of moving seeds around. So we'll just keep that going. Okay, so the maple seeds aren't going to go very far, right? They're just going to go straight down, maybe a little bit to the left or right from the tree, correct? So, but they're found lots and lots of places, and sometimes they're found in really isolated places. So how did they get there? What's one way besides maybe animals or wind, or like a light wind? Yeah.
Really big ones.
Really big wind, so like a hurricane or something like that. Yeah. So a lot of seeds will get to islands, especially tropical islands, by being picked up in huge storms like hurricanes, and they'll be deposited on other islands. And so if a big hurricane came through here, which isn't going to happen, but if last weekend when we had a lot of wind, if this seed had fallen out, it could have been picked up and maybe lofted in the atmosphere and moved for hundreds or maybe even thousands of miles, depending on how high in the atmosphere it gets picked up, and it could be deposited somewhere else. So kind of really extreme weather events can be good seed dispersers as well. Or it can get on an airplane. I was going to bring a paper airplane today, but so that's kind of how humans do that. We can take them through the air as well, but on an airplane.